looking live. There's something sacred about this stadium and its setting. There's nothing like this venue, in my opinion, in all of sports.
The setting is about as good as anywhere in the country. With the San Gabriel Mountains in the backdrop, it's always picturesque.
We're gonna play football.
Happy Memorial Day weekend, everybody, and welcome back to Rose Bowl Live. As we celebrate together this holiday weekend, we want to start by remembering our fallen heroes in the military and acknowledge all that they have defended with our freedoms. Thank you to all the men and women who continue to protect us in so many ways across the world. It means a lot to us. And everybody at the Rose Bowl Stadium, America's Stadium, thanks you for your incredible bravery. We're back today with episode 5 of Rose Bowl Live, our virtual stadium series where we visit with some of our favorite Rose Bowl Stadium family members. And through the first month, 4 episodes, we welcomed Hall of Famers, broadcast legends, Olympians, and World Cup champions. And on behalf of our CEO, Dedan, and the entire stadium staff, we'd like to say thank you for continuing to tune in every week and enjoying these conversations together as we all shelter at home. Our guest today is another legend, a college football legend, Cade McNown. His bio is incredibly impressive, a participant in the 1999 Rose Bowl game, which was actually the first year of the BCS. We're going to get into that in a little bit. Cade's coach was Bob Toledo, and UCLA was #1 in the country for part of that season, much of that season. In that 99 Rose Bowl game, UCLA set a single-team record for total yards. Cade passed for 340 yards in his final college game, which was the 4th highest total of all time for a Rose Bowl game, a big, big number. And the teams, Wisconsin was the opponent, the teams combined for a record 1,035 yards. So a big day in Pasadena back in 1999. Cade's bio continues to be a huge, legendary resume for college football history. He was a consensus All-American. He was the only UCLA Bruin to throw for over 10,000 yards, huge number there. He's a member of the Hall of Fame at UCLA, the Rose Bowl, and he's a member of the class of 2020 for the College Football Hall of Fame. We'll talk to Cade a little bit about that here shortly. He led the Bruins to the 1997 and 98 Pac-10 titles, quarterbacked them to a record 20 wins in a row at a certain time across those 2 seasons, and finished his career as the conference's all-time leader in total yards before going to the NFL as a first-round draft pick. And Cade, as we welcome you in, probably the biggest statistic is you were 4-0 against USC, and that's the only time we'll mention USC on today's broadcast. But Cade, welcome in. How are you and Christina doing? How are the kids doing? What have you been up to? I'm sure you're sitting at home like all of us here.
I am sitting at home. That is correct. Thanks for asking. My family's doing well, and thanks, of course, for having me on. It's a pleasure to break up a little bit of the monotony that I'm sure all of us have been dealing with, and take a stroll down memory lane.
We appreciate you tuning in. You've always been such an incredible family member to the Rose Bowl. I mean, even going back to when we built the Terry Donahue Pavilion, it's called that. Our CEO Daryl tells a story that you so graciously walked suite to suite in the old building, just encouraging people to stay invested in UCLA football and the Rose Bowl as we were turning a corner with our new renovation project, Cade. So, you've been around a long time and have been very important to us, and we're excited to have you in for episode 5.
Well,
I want to start with that journey to UCLA, if we could. You went to high school in 2 states, California and Oregon. What made you make the trip down to Westwood and sign to be the quarterback down there for 4 years? I mean, what was it about that recruiting process that brought you to Westwood?
Well, it all started when Terry Donahue came up and visited me at my home in outside of Portland, Oregon, in West Lynn, and basically said, he wanted me to come down on a recruiting trip. So I had lined up a handful of colleges to go and visit for the allotted recruiting trips, and UCLA was my first one. And when I showed up at campus in Westwood and walked around, and then went over and visited the Rose Bowl and got to see where UCLA plays all their home games, Donahue brought me into his office sort of at the end of that trip and said, "Hey, look, I want to offer you a scholarship. And if you tell me you're coming, I'm not interested in any other quarterbacks." And I said, "Where do I sign?" I'm in. I didn't need to go see the other schools. I knew enough to know that that's where I wanted to go. So, I mean, look, growing up in Northern California, I went to a lot of Stanford games and Cal and just, obviously UCLA was a dominant team in the 80s and, sort of in my more formative years. And so when, all those memories and all those, those visions of being a part of that historic program, with an opportunity to compete for, at that time, a Pac-10 title and, potentially a national title was very, very exciting.
Yeah. The recruiting process, it's changed so much over the years. Obviously, now we got athletes in middle school that are creating recruiting videos, and the game is so much deeper because of the digital connectivity that the world has. Talk about a little bit the recruiting process for you. What other schools were you looking at and considering? You just told us, thankfully, we got to see you play in the Rose Bowl through Westwood, and the whole UCLA fan base is thankful for that. But were there other schools that you were looking at before you sat down in Coach Donahue's office that day?
Yeah, so I grew up, I was a bit of a Notre Dame fan. I'm not sure, why, but I mean, the good thing that UCLA and Notre Dame both share is a bit of a disdain for USC. So I guess that it was an easy transition. But I actually have a lot of friends from USC, and they're okay. But anyhow, so I was very tuned into Notre Dame. I actually went down there for a football camp, and they had ended up offering a scholarship to a kid, basically after his junior year. And I didn't have a junior year because I had an emergency appendectomy about 3 games into my junior year of high school. So I missed the rest of the season and then moved from Northern California to Oregon. So I kind of was off the recruiting map and was really late to the party, I would say, in terms of getting notice and getting offers. So, I mean, in the 11th hour, I was offered at Stanford, and I'm not sure if Oregon ever really offered me. I was interested in University of Washington at that time. It was another, dominant team in the Pac-10 at that time. So, I never paid a lot of attention to the news and all the rankings and everything else. I guess it was just hard to follow for me, and I wasn't going to spend all the money on those magazines. So, I learned early on that what is said in the press isn't always accurate. So I was very excited when I heard it from the horse's mouth, and when Coach Donahue offered me, and I didn't want to take any other chances, and I said, this is it for me.
So sitting in Coach's office, and Coach, if you're listening out there, the entire UCLA Rose Bowl family, which wishes you and Andrea well as you continue to battle in your own way, Coach. But Cade, talk about, you're sitting in Coach Donahue's office. He's near the end of his collegiate coaching career. I mean, you had to know about his pedigree walking into the office that day and, fielding the visit from him up in Portland, right? I mean, he's a legend by UCLA standards to this day. I mean, how much did you know as an 18, 19-year-old kid in regards to who you were talking to in Terry Donahue?
Well, I knew who I was talking to. I mean, I probably didn't appreciate the scope of it, but I knew that he was a very important person and still is. And so just having the opportunity to sit down with him and visit with him was a big treat. But I will say, I don't think anybody knew at that point, maybe outside of his family, that he was going into his last year. I mean, I was thinking, oh, this is great. He'll be here for 4 years, and my 4 or 5 years, whatever it is, and he's young and he's got all his career still ahead of him. And then after 1 year, he decided to step down. So and we had a great coach in Bob Toledo who stepped in, who was our offensive coordinator at the time of my freshman year. And I was very active in pushing wherever I could to see Bob Toledo get the head coaching job, and he was an amazing follow-on to Coach Donahue.
For those of you viewing online on our YouTube channel and Facebook channel, if you have questions for Cade, we're going to get to some fan questions a little bit later in the interview. So please send them through those 2 channels as you're viewing, and we'd be happy to get to them and make sure that he gets an opportunity to answer whatever might be on your mind. Cade, I'd like to stick with Coach Donahue and that transition to Coach DeLito for a second, because Coach did keep his promise to you. He didn't recruit another quarterback. You started as a freshman. What were you thinking when you came out on the field of the Rose Bowl, your first home game as a starter for UCLA? I think you guys won 31-8 over Miami, 60,000 people at the Rose Bowl in Pasadena. And Miami it's a common denominator in your history at UCLA. We'll get to the second game with them a little bit later, but talk about walking out in the Rose Bowl as a freshman, true freshman, taking snaps under center as a starter at UCLA for the first time. What was going through your head? What was your body feeling like? Did you know before game day?
Yeah, so I didn't go to UCLA with the idea, you read a lot of these kids coming out of high school, going into college, they demand to be, starters, or they want to get the look. I mean, I was just happy to be at UCLA. I was not looking to be the starter, my true freshman year by any stretch of the imagination. I expected to go and have to sit for a couple of years. I mean, throughout the 80s, I think, only a fifth-year senior started like 4 or 5 years in a row. So it was, you had to earn your stripes, and really through a series of injuries and, some shuffling around. And, I kind of just worked my way up from, 5 or 6 on the depth chart to 3 and ultimately to 2. And so I was the backup going into that first game. And it was great to get a huge win like that. I will say I didn't have much to do with the win. I played about 5 snaps after our starting quarterback got knocked out. But nevertheless, it was a huge opportunity to go and run out onto the field of a nationally televised game, and being essentially 3 months out of my lunch line from high school. I'm now on the Rose Bowl field against the University of Miami, who I'd seen play for a national title, I think, the year before, and Keith Jackson's calling the game, and it was a huge thrill. I remember going in. I was not nervous. I was just very focused, and I was I think one of the things Terry Donahue did in that moment that was really, looking back, was a genius move. Was he just walked over to me and stood there while the coordinator gave me the play, and I just ran in. There was no pep talk like, hey, everything's gonna be fine. This is a big deal. It's just like, all right, you've already been trained, now go do it. So, it's treating somebody with that calm attitude in those what could be very intense moments, I think goes a long way for somebody who's 18 years old and going out to do that.
Yeah. And through the course of your career, I mean, obviously the coaching you experienced with Donahue and Toledo and right up on through the NFL ranks, I mean, you had a certain calmness about you and what was provided to you that really supplemented your athleticism, which I was telling the guys before you hopped on with us today, looking back at your stats, Cade, I mean, you had some incredible moments, but the just the incredible body of work that you put together at UCLA and beyond was truly special. You had some, I said you're the only Bruin to throw for over 10,000 yards. We rattled off some of the 99 Rose Bowl game stats that we'll get into here in a minute. But point being, that body of work now got you into, you're a member of the class of 2020 to go into the College Football Hall of Fame in Atlanta. And if anybody hasn't been to Atlanta to see the College Football Hall of Fame, it's truly special. Please go do it. Select the UCLA helmet when you walk in and get your badge, your name badge. But Cade, what did that mean to you and your family when you got the call as a new member of the College Football Hall of Fame class? You have to go through the dinner and get formally inducted here coming up and later in the year, but that had to be pretty special for you guys after looking back what y'all had been through football wise as a career and as a family.
Yeah, no, I mean, look, it's a huge honor. I mean, any way you slice it, to be even, and they point this out pretty clearly on the website and in the letter, like to even be considered on the list of candidates is a huge deal. So to then ultimately, I've been up for it a couple times over the last several years. I was shocked to find out that I was going in, and then of course to then look and see that there's people that I grew up, thinking the world of, both in college football as well as in the NFL. To then be in a class with them is even more humbling. So I mean, look, the reality is you mentioned some pretty big numbers. You never go out thinking about that. I mean, my goal, chains. Just stay on the field. Keep moving the chains. Keep moving the chains. If you keep moving them, eventually you end up in the end zone. And it's get back out there and do it again. So you don't think about, you never think about stats. The stats just follow, playing well and winning. And again, if you stay on the field, you move the chains, you're going to put up some big numbers.
Yeah. So one of those seasons where you and the squad just put up some incredible numbers, it was pretty special going between 97 and 98 with that school record 20-game win streak that y'all had. But the 98 season was a pretty magical one. You guys were on a roll. You're in the top 2 in the BCS rankings before Mother Nature stepped in. You set some records that day in Miami, the final game of the season. And that game was originally scheduled for late September, but was postponed because of a hurricane. Can you talk about that hurricane game? I want to get it out of the way because I know it's a sore spot for all of us UCLA fans and for yourself. But respectfully, would you walk us through the mindset of coach wanting to actually play that game and you guys were so close to clinching a spot in that national championship game and just wasn't in the cards that day. But what was that experience like for you guys riding that wave all season, being in the top of the rankings, and then going to Miami and playing your hearts out in that final day?
Look, it was a great season. To go undefeated up to that game was very exciting. But we were never. I don't think our mindset. I know my mindset was never about, hey, we got to stay undefeated or we got to keep. It's just like you don't want whatever team is in front of you that day to be the team that ruins your objective or your goal or your dream. So for us, we wanted to win the Pac-10. We wanted to, give ourselves a chance at a national championship and then ultimately win the national championship. And so, nobody in my mind was, going to be worthy of taking us down. Like we were not going to let it happen. And Miami, through a series of unfortunate events, with some, picking up some big first downs that, ended up turning into fumbles and, down the stretch, kind of just put us in a tough position to where, we were kind of up the whole game and then gave it away at the end. And then of course, took a final shot at the end zone at the end, but it was a very tough game. And as a lot of people know, if instant replay had been around back then, we probably would have won the game and probably would have, in my estimation, I think we would have gone and beaten up on Tennessee in a national title game, given the fact that they were the last team to have beaten us, the year before. So that was at the Rose Bowl, and we got off to an 0-2 start before going on to a 20-game win streak.
Yeah, and ended with an incredible comeback win at the Cotton Bowl, I believe, where you took MVP honors on behalf of your team and in the midst of that 20-game win streak. I do want to note that day in Miami, the UCLA offense rolled up about 630 total yards, and Cade actually set the school record for passing that day with 513 through the air. I mean, Cade, we're looking at some of the clips here now together. I mean, some of these plays, including the one rolling to your left, where you're about ready to get knocked out of bounds, dive out of bounds. I mean, you threw that thing on a dime. I mean, how much – talk about the athleticism of that team. I mean, we talked a little bit about yours, and you've given so much credit to your guys and your line and your talent around you. I mean, you have some pretty strong playmakers on the outside and Farmer and other pass catchers that were helping you log those numbers. I mean, talk about what made the roster special that year in '98.
Well, I mean, look, it was – you can't underestimate the value of time spent together. And so, most of that offensive line had been in the same positions for 3 years in a row, right? Which is unusual in college football. A lot of the other guys on the offense, I mean, a lot of us had been together since we went 5-6 my sophomore year. We lost a lot of guys after my freshman year. That was a very heavily seniors-oriented team. But we just built a great we had built a great chemistry together. And so, even where we lacked in, ability or whatever else, we had done so much together for so long that, just a lot of great things would happen pretty regularly. And I look at a game like that Miami game in particular, and I think it was just a great offensive showcase of kind of years of that had led up to that, to be able to do what we did that day offensively. And I still, despite it being a tough loss and everything, I still look at that game as one of the best games, if not the best game, offensively that we played. So.
And the consolation prize of going to Pasadena, I know it stings that you didn't get that rematch with Tennessee that you referenced, but a consolation prize in Pasadena on New Year's Day isn't bad, and you got to play in one of the most exciting Rose Bowl games in the history of the game, which has been going on for 105, 106 years. When we had John Shara and Coach Vermeil on back in episode 2 a few weeks back, we asked them about the preparation weeks leading up to it. Campus is quiet. There's a several-week break in between that season finale and the pomp and circumstance of the granddaddy of them all. We'd love to ask you the same thing. I mean, what were those preparation weeks like, and the media exposure and that feeling before kickoff? Did you guys get over the Miami trip fairly quickly? How were those extra weeks helpful in preparing for January 1st?
Well, I wouldn't. I mean, I know what you mean when you say it's consolation, but I wouldn't call the Rose Bowl a consolation. No. It's such an incredible opportunity, and in all candor, I would have considered my career very, equally falling short if I hadn't been able to play in an actual Rose Bowl game while I was at UCLA. So despite not being able to play in the national championship game that year, getting to play in the Rose Bowl was a huge, huge honor and a huge, just a huge step for all of us. And so it's hard to remember all the weeks leading up. I mean, obviously there's some dialed back weeks for a bit, and then you start to ramp it up leading up to the game. But there's a lot of media attention. There's a lot of activities everybody's doing, especially in the 1 week leading up, or the last week leading up to the game. But it was just really fun, and we looked at it like, you don't go to play a game without trying to win. So it wasn't like it wasn't like one of these bowl games that didn't matter. It's the Rose Bowl. Like you got to win the Rose Bowl, and so it was a very hard fought game. I didn't think that looking back, we did not match up really well against Wisconsin. I think they were, if not the number one scoring defense, certainly one of the top scoring defenses in the country that year. And, we still put up a few points on them. But they had a very, very talented running back in Ron Dane, who just, leaned on our defense and big offensive line. And I think I was a little nervous about the game when at the Lowry's Beef Bowl, I think they outate us by about 2 times the amount of meat. I thought that might be an indication that it was going to be a tough game.
Yeah, those Big Ten. What did Keith Jackson used to call the Big Ten linemen, the big uglies, right? I mean, I'm sure they could really pound it away at Lowry's over there on the west side, and a great tradition of the Rose Bowl game leading up to it. And Cade, you even got to see the Rose Bowl game from a different perspective a few years back when you got inducted in the Rose Bowl Hall of Fame. You get to ride in the parade, right?
I did. That was an amazing experience, to get to be there and see all the things. It was really interesting getting to see, kind of taking a step back, all that went on around the game that I was playing in, right? I didn't experience any of that when I was playing in the game, in terms of the parade and all that. So to then get to see the other side of things and see how much time and effort all the folks involved at the Rose Bowl put in. And not just I mean, everybody knows about the building of the floats and how incredible that is, but just the whole Tournament of Roses and everybody who's involved across the board. I mean, the volunteering is incredible. It's really and the people could not be greater people to work with, and it's a very, very well-oiled machine you guys have going over there.
What was more pressure, strapping it up in 1999 on January 1st, or waving down a long parade route for 2 hours? What put more tension on your throwing shoulder that day?
Well, more pressure for the game, but definitely, I think my shoulder was more tired waving.
I want to throw it back to Ryan. Ryan's in the back. He's our videographer with Name Brand Advertising, and Ryan does a great job every week on Rose Bowl Live. I want to see if Ryan can pull up. There was a 2-play sequence in that 1999 game that really stuck out when you rewatch the game. And if anybody gets a chance to rewatch it, you'll let us know. This is the first UCLA touchdown that day that we're going to see here on a little crossing route. But Cade, the one I want you to see and maybe talk us through is right after that play right here, where you guys got 2 big chunks on consecutive plays. This play we see here. I mean, you mind walking us through this play and then the touchdown to Farmer?
Oh, well, shoot. I mean, I'm not prepared for that, Dean. I can't walk you through that whole sequence, but it looked like I just saw, I don't know, it looked like I was just rolling out and threw a pass to my right-hand side.
You're under a lot of heat on that one too here. You're coming in with somebody hitting you low here, coming down. That'd be a flag in today's game.
Yeah, that's no big deal. I mean, that's just, you got to be ready for that. Is this a touchdown pass coming up here?
This is a touchdown, yeah. It looked like a little seam route or something up the gut.
Yeah, being that this is the last game of the season, I don't think I did a lot of game review afterwards, so I got to look at it now. I just remember, one of the things I remember from that game was that I felt like we were going to have a really tough time stopping Ron Dane, and I felt a lot of pressure to go out and score a touchdown on every drive. And, so even though we only ended up with, 31 points in that game, it was a hard fought game. We were in it. We had a couple of hiccups. I don't think we were anywhere as good in that game as we were against Miami. But we'd had some folks, some injuries and some other things, that late in the season, it's almost, you got to just be kind of lucky to make sure that you keep everybody full speed and completely healthy. And, it felt like we were kind of running on fumes a little bit at the end of that year. We didn't have the same depth, I don't think, my senior year that we did my junior year, on both sides of the ball. But we still had a very good team. And again, that chemistry that had been developed over all those years really, really came up big for us. No, you got to hand it to Wisconsin for playing a great game, and I think they won it again the next year. And we had our shot, but didn't capitalize.
Yeah. standards there. But what do I say? Hey, it's Memorial Day weekend. Even the Wi-Fi takes a break and puts its feet up. It's been quarantined too. So, but the Tournament of Roses, they do such a great job on that game every year. And I want to close our conversation on the 99 game. And, that game is so magnetic every January 1st or January 2nd when it happens on that day. And I want the fans to really realize that. You mentioned Ron Dane a couple times. And when we got to see Ron Dane in Wisconsin go nose to nose with Cade McNown, and that's a rarity to see two stars like that on January 1st. So, we appreciate you sharing some of that with us, Cade. I want to move on because you've been so humble in giving accolades to your teammates and talking about, the togetherness you guys had. Because of that togetherness and the team being the team that it was for you, you got to benefit from it by being a Heisman finalist. You were a Heisman finalist the last two seasons, your junior year and senior year. In your senior year, you actually finished third in the Heisman balloting, which is a huge, huge accomplishment. Talk to us a little bit about that. We haven't had somebody on yet on Rose Bowl Live that has gone through the Heisman experience. I mean, when you look back on that day and that voting process, I mean, that had to strike itself to you as being somewhat cool, right?
It was an amazing, situation. But just to touch on your point about being humble, when you spend most of your time talking about the two biggest losses of your career, it keeps you humble. So thanks for thanks for doing that. No, but listen, going back to New York for that event was really it was awesome. It was super fun. Going up against, great players like Ricky Williams and Tim Couch and Michael Bishop and all those guys were there for that evening. It was really fun to get to do that and just see all the tradition and the history, around that presentation and kind of the brotherhood of the folks who won it, and even to some extent the folks who've gotten to participate in the in the actual awards dinner. It's a special honor and something that I'll never forget.
Yeah. Now take us from we went from Heisman, we went to 99 Rose Bowl game, which was an iconic game in the timeline of the stadium. Talk about now your preparation for the NFL and that draft night. You were a first-round draft pick. Your name was called early that night. What was that like for you, hearing your name being called on draft night for you and your family? Where were you? We saw a picture flash up on the screen briefly here a second ago. Were you at the draft that day? Can you tell us about that day for you?
Yeah, so I'd been invited to the draft. Which meant, the expectation was that you'd go in the first round. So I was back there for that. When the season ended, my senior year, I went and spent about, can't remember, it was maybe a couple weeks down in Florida, going through. IMG had bought the voluntary tennis facility in Bradenton, Florida, and they were using it to get guys ready for the draft. So, when you go in for the combine, you want to be prepared, and obviously there's a lag between the end of the season and that combine. So, staying in peak physical shape is essential to be able to put up some good numbers and to also be able to throw, strong and accurately. So. That consumed, part of my early winter, and then I re-enrolled in at UCLA for the spring quarter. But yeah, so being back at that draft and getting that announcement was incredible. I mean, the Bears were one of the handful of teams that I'd spent a lot of time talking to, and I wasn't really concerned with getting drafted in the first round or second or third. I viewed it as a process, and that once I, got to a team, then I just continued to develop and hopefully start and hopefully have a long career. Things were accelerated very quickly. When you're drafted, number 12 overall, and obviously in the first round, they want to get you out there early. So, which means less time getting acclimated to the NFL and sort of how everything works and the flow of things. So it's it's a double-edged sword to go out there and get the opportunity early on, because at the same time, a lot can be said for spending a couple years behind an all-pro and learning the game, while you're not getting beat up, and then ultimately, stepping in. You're often more prepared after a couple of years of exposure than, going right from college into the NFL.
And getting into it as quick as you did, I mean, is there a quote unquote welcome to the NFL moment that you remember where you recall the game being a little quicker than the collegiate space that you were in, or a hit or an interaction out on the field that maybe we haven't heard about? I mean, what was that welcome to the NFL moment for you?
Oh, there were a bunch of them. Every team you play wants to welcome you. So it's, I didn't mind any of that. I would say, generally it was an amazing experience. One thing I pointed out in the past that I still believe is true is that, in college football, you'll typically be able to find a weak link. There's somebody you can expose or go after on the other side. And in the NFL, there are no weak links. There's nobody on the other side that's just weak. You kind of just have to have somebody on your side who's that much better. And, case in point is when I spent a year with the 49ers and I played with Terrell Owens, he was one of those guys who was just better. So, you want to feed him the ball, get him the ball, but it's not like you're going after somebody who's weak. You've just got somebody who's that much better, and you want to give them the ball as often as possible. So, that's what I'd say is one of the big differences. Obviously, the other couple of differences I'll mention is that in college, everybody's pretty much in the same boat. We're all somewhere between 18 and 23 years old. Pretty much nobody's married. Pretty much no one has kids. So you're kind of all in the same socioeconomic situation, and it's very fun. When you get to the NFL, you've got a big spread. People who are 20, 21, 22, and folks who are 40. Some have been in the NFL for a dozen years. Some are new. Some have made lots of money and have these big lives, and others are just trying to make it to the next day. And so it's very, very different, that environment. In college, you're guaranteed essentially 5 years when you get a scholarship. They don't cut you. So, that it's much more, I wouldn't say it's more relaxed, but it's, you're not looking over your shoulder quite as much for the Grim Reaper to come and take you away like they do in the NFL, or as they say, NFL stands for not for long. And, there's a lot of turnover, and you can just look at one team after another. And there's typically a pretty small percentage of players that remain from year to year in most NFL teams. There's a lot of movement. So, it just makes that college football experience that much more special.
Hang tight.
The sports values that you learned from underneath the helmet. We're partners with the National Football Foundation here at the stadium, and you're going into the class of 2020 to the College Football Hall of Fame. I think you're the 16th Bruin overall. You're in a quarterback lineage that includes Gary Beeben, John Shara, Troy Aikman, yourself, Cade McNown. It's really incredible, and those are all value-based leaders, and that have really been in leadership roles for the Bruins. I mean, you played the game for a long time at the highest level. What makes the game of football so special to so many people, and what can we learn that you can share about your experiences about leadership and the teamwork aspects of the game? Like, what do you take away from those friendships that you had all those years?
Well, there's a lot of questions in there, so I'll address the leadership thing first. But I would say, nobody is given the role of leader, you've got to earn it. And when I came in as a true freshman and began to start those games about halfway through the season, I'm sitting there looking at guys like Jonathan Ogden and Mike Flanagan and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and Kevin Jordan. I mean, those guys on our offense, they were the leaders, not me. I mean, I was calling the plays, but they'd been there for many years. They had earned their stripes. And look, as a quarterback, yes, you have a leadership role, and it's sort of inherited at some level, but you don't just get to keep that, and you've got to continue to earn it and sort of earn into it. And I would say that I didn't really feel like I had kind of earned, my role as a leader until probably halfway through my junior year. It was a couple of tough years, and you got a lot of guys who are older than you, who've been there longer than you, have worked, more hours than you, and so you gotta just wait for your opportunity and be persistent, and eventually, you may earn the opportunity for people to listen to you. But I mean, I think one thing you can't overlook is the fact that you've got to be willing to work as hard or harder than anybody on the team. And when you do those things, I think you give yourself a much better chance at being a leader, because you never want to ask anybody to do anything that you're not willing to do yourself. And I was willing to run through walls for my teammates, and I expected them to do the same.
And I think everybody, including the UCLA faithful, realizes that. It's not public yet, but we'll make it public now. The Rose Bowl Stadium is about to name Tunnel 8 after Cade McNown, and moving forward, it will be the Cade McNown Tunnel at the Rose Bowl. We'll have a beautiful picture of Cade next to that tunnel, and that's something that's going to be very special to us, Cade, and we appreciate all your contributions to the Bruins and how you continue to lead in your post-football career as a family man, as a business professional. It means a lot to us, and we're excited to retell your story through that tunnel over there at the Rose Bowl. And we want to thank everybody that donated to make that project happen over there at the stadium. So stay tuned out there, everybody, for some news on when we'll dedicate that, and we'll have Cade at a game, this season, God willing, hoping there's college football for sure. But Cade, that's a testament to you and how good you've been, in your post career as well. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Dedan. No, it's I mean, as you know, I've told you this before. It's a tremendous honor, and I also want to say thank you to all those who got involved and helped make that happen. It's very, very special, and especially as somebody who's got kids now, who's married and has children, to get to experience some of these things with them is really, really fun. So I can't thank you enough.
We're going to get into some fan questions here in a second, because we have a bunch coming through YouTube and Facebook, and thank you all for submitting those questions. But before we do that, I thought we'd do a quick lightning round, Cade. We have some fun questions we're going to start asking our guests every week, so you didn't get to prepare for these, but there's no hard hitters. Hopefully, we'll see what happens. But first question, Cade, your favorite Los Angeles area restaurant, what is it?
My favorite LA area restaurant? That's a tough one.
So you can drop down to Phil Traney's in Long Beach, or you can go, up to your neighborhood. There's a pretty.
I mean, if it's Long Beach, it's Phil Traney's, of course. That's my guy. I mean, I live over on the west side. I mean, I don't know. It's my wife and I. We hit Hillstone quite a bit, and but I mean, I guess it's probably, probably one of my favorites is Capo, but that's just because I can't afford to eat there more than once a day. So that's another great spot. But there's, LA's filled with terrific restaurants.
When you guys go to the beach as a family, second question, what's your favorite beach to visit in the Southern California area? Will you guys drive to one, or will you hit one in the neighborhood?
Well, my favorite beach is the closest one. So, for us, that's just across the PCH over at Will Rogers. But we will, we drive up north quite a bit. We get up to, Carpinteria and Santa Barbara and also head south. So it just depends on it actually just depends on the people. Whatever our friends want to do, we're up for that. But as a family, we're pretty flexible. Any time with 4 young kids, any time at the beach is a good time.
All right, next question. So you do have those young kids. What's your favorite movie? Is it a kids movie because you're watching so many of them over the recent part of your home life, or what do you guys hang your hat on movie wise when you get a chance to watch one?
Well,
I quarantine, so I know you've watched one. So
I haven't gotten to watch a movie of my choice in about 12 years now. So it's all the whatever the kids want generally. But I don't know. I mean, that's a tough one. Favorite movie? I mean, gosh, there's so many. I mean, I'm a big fan of any inspirational sports movie, and there have been a lot of those made. So, I guess probably one of my all-time favorites is still Hoosiers. I love that movie. Every time I watch it, I get fired up. So, of course, it's too old now. My kids don't want to watch it. So it's an old movie. It's not a new movie.
All right, next question. You've gotten a chance to travel quite a bit in your football career and your career as a student athlete, as well as your current professional life. Do you have a favorite city outside of Los Angeles to travel to?
I travel to a lot of big cities for work. And yeah, I've been, kind of all over, but I would say, most of these cities are great cities with great people. I spent a lot of time, spent a lot of time in Chicago, New York, Portland and Seattle and San Francisco, kind of up and down the West Coast, time in Hawaii and Alaska. And actually for work, I had to spend quite a bit of time in Australia and New Zealand over the last few years. So it really just depends on, the time of year. I don't want to be in Chicago in the winter, I don't want to be there in the summer. I like being there in the fall or the spring. But there are a lot of, it really just depends, but I'm not, I wouldn't say there's a particular favorite one. Other than Los Angeles, which is always to me the best city.
Right on. A few more, and then we're going to get to the fan questions here. Next lightning round question. You're a competitor. Your kids play sports. You watch sports. What's your favorite sport other than football?
Well, my favorite sport to play is probably golf. And I actually love playing tennis as well. Paddle tennis, beach paddle tennis, pickleball, whatever. Like anything. I'm more of a doer than a watcher. So anything I can do to get out and play, I'm up for it. I enjoy watching my oldest son play baseball, although, the season was canceled this spring, so we didn't get to do that. But in the past, that's been a great thing for us to do. And then my girls both play soccer, and my 5-year-old will probably play everything. He's a little bit of a lunatic, so we'll see how that goes. But those are probably my typical sports.
All right. Next lightning round question. What's your favorite part about Westwood? Is it the restaurants? Is it the theater? Is it the campus? I mean, you're not too far away where you live right now. I mean, what's your favorite part about, the campus area over there in Westwood?
Yeah, no, I just love the campus. I think UCLA's got one of the prettiest campuses, in the nation, with the best weather and just a world-class environment all around. And, every time I go on that campus, I got to pinch myself. It's incredible to see. And it's been developed quite a bit, over the years, even since I was there. So the campus is definitely my favorite part of Westwood.
All right. And last lightning round question. You said you're a golfer. So we're going to ask you, who do you like tomorrow? Do you like Tiger and Peyton Manning, or do you like Phil Mickelson and Tom Brady? And then second question, what golf club would you pick if you had to pick one club to play a par 4, like they have to tomorrow?
Well, how long is the par 4?
I don't know what it is tomorrow, but let's say it's 3 1/4, 325.
I mean, I'm probably going to play an 8-iron would be my go-to. I don't think I'd go with a 7-iron. If I get in the sand, I'm toast. So, I think I can get out with an 8 iron, not with a 7. But I would say, who am I picking in that matchup? I'm gonna have to go with Phil. Yeah, I'm gonna have to go with Phil and Tom.
Yeah, when money's on the line, it seems like Phil's got a bit of an edge in these one-on-one games.
I mean, I think, I'm not sure. I feel like Peyton might be a better golfer than Brady. But I don't know. Just in this environment, I feel like Phil and Tom are going to probably edge out Tiger and Peyton. That's just.
Yeah. You think Peyton would be a better golfer just out of the sheer fact that he's in retirement and might have a little bit more time in his hands. But
yeah. No, that's true. That's true.
It's going to be nice to see some live sports tomorrow. That's for sure.
He had those neck issues, and which probably helps him keep his head still on his swing. So he's a great. Actually, both those guys. I don't know Phil or Tiger really much, but I've spent time with both Tom and Peyton. They're both outstanding guys. So they'll have a great time. There'll be a lot of yapping.
Get those microphones going. We'd love to hear that stuff.
Exactly.
All right, we're gonna get to some fan questions now, Cade. We appreciate you going through some Q&A with us, and thank you to those listeners and viewers on Facebook and YouTube. We appreciate you submitting some questions. Cade, this one's from YouTube. The listener wants to know what game stands out the most for you during your career, not necessarily as a Bruin, but across your football career. Is there a game that stands out? It could be high school, anything.
Well, I guess, probably the first one that comes to mind is, what I thought was a real turning point for us. And my sophomore year when we beat USC in double overtime, we were down, pretty significantly towards the end of the fourth quarter, and just never gave up, just kept fighting, not with the idea that we were going to win the game, but just with the idea that we were not going to just go quietly into the night. And, we got a couple of bounces went our way, and some things happened that turned it around and allowed us to get into a position to win, and ultimately won the game. And it just, I think that really set the tone. Even though we lost the first 2 games my junior year, the following year, they were both very hard fought games that came down to the last play. And I think, just having that, experience as a team really got us through those first 2 losses, and ultimately, took us on an unbelievable ride for the subsequent 2 years.
Next question. This is also from YouTube. We mentioned you're the only UCLA quarterback to be 4-0 against the Trojans, which is a huge deal, and we all love that about you. We're excited for you to go in the Hall of Fame and everything, Cade, but we'll always lead the first sentence with that 4-0 record because it's huge for the Bruins. Can you talk about your favorite victory over USC out of those 4? Is there one that sticks out?
Well, I guess that one I just mentioned sticks out, but I would say also our first one. That was an amazing game at the Coliseum, and we got out to a big lead. We had lost our starting running back the week before against University of Washington, and so we were not able to have him, and he was our big star, and we had a great running game, and so we ended up going sort of running back by committee, and every running back in that game had sort of brought something different to the table. So some guys were a little more powerful, some guys were a little faster around the edge, and so it was just a very they weren't prepared for that, and we got off to a great start, got up by 3 touchdowns, and then we kind of just sat on the ball and didn't want to give anything away. So we ended up pulling out that game somehow, but it was a very memorable game because not just the nature of everything leading up, but USC was going to the Rose Bowl that year, so having an opportunity to knock them out right before that was a huge opportunity. And then of course there's a story that Coach Donahue likes to tell, from time to time, where I went over and basically shook his head and told him not to take me out because he had removed me from a game earlier in the year, and I could kind of sense that he wanted to do it again, even though he says he didn't. I just felt like he was, and so I kind of grabbed him and told him, I can get this done. He left me, and so it's a very memorable game for several reasons.
All right, next question comes in from a viewer on Facebook. They want to know, other than the Rose Bowl, what was your favorite stadium to play in, NFL or collegiate?
I love playing in the Coliseum. I mean, going down, that was another memory my freshman year, getting onto the bus and going from Century City down to the 10 and taking the 10 into downtown LA on a Saturday mid-morning where they'd stopped all traffic and, the freeways are clear as can be. It brings a gravity to the moment. Like this is a big deal. And just, I'll never forget that sight. And so, that playing the Coliseum was a special place, obviously. And then I would say the other couple of stadiums I got to play in that were really memorable for me were down in Knoxville. The SEC always puts on a big show, and that was pretty fun. And of course, going to the Big House in Michigan. I guess some of the reason these games are more stuck in my mind is also because we lost both those games too. So, if you're lucky enough, you tend to remember your losses more than your victories. So nevertheless, those are great stadiums and just great college football environments. And University of Washington was great. Autzen was great. Stanford was pretty quiet at the time. That was in their old stadium. Tempe got rocking. Tucson was. These were. We were a good team, so a lot of people turned out for our games too. So, my last couple of years, we got very, very good turnouts, big, packed stadiums. And that's something I hope we get to again very soon around the country and around the world, because that energy is something that is really, really, really special for people.
Yeah. All right, last question, and then we'll call it a day on episode 5 here. It comes in from Facebook. They'd like to know, Cade, did you have any pregame routines? Was there something that stuck with you through UCLA and then into the pros, or did you simply just strap it up and go? I mean, what was your routine if you had one?
I wouldn't say I had a unique routine or anything. I mean, I kind of did what I was supposed to do. It was typically on the first bus, or it was on the first or second bus over. Whatever bus, made sense. I was on that one. And, you get over there, you get taped up, and you go out and start warming up, and you just go through all the drills. I mean, being on a football team, and especially playing at a high level, there's a lot of process. There's a lot of, just a lot of rhythm, and you just kind of do it over and over and over. And so while it may look at times like, it's something I'm doing myself, I'm just following directions and doing the things I have to do. But I wouldn't say I had anything that was out there. So,
Cade, hey, we appreciate your time today. This hour you spent with us was very generous, very kind. You're a favorite UCLA Bruin. Sorry my Wi-Fi signal is ready for Memorial Day weekend as much as we all are, but appreciate you rolling with us today. Congratulations on your upcoming induction in the College Football Hall of Fame as the 16th UCLA Bruin out there that's going to be enshrined. And we're your biggest fans, your biggest cheerleaders out here, and we appreciate all you do for us at the stadium, Cade.
Hey, I can't wait to get back into a very, very packed Rose Bowl stadium one of these days soon. So keep up the great work, and again, thanks for having me on, and to all the Bruin Nation, hang in there. It's going to be great one of these days, hopefully soon.
That's right, Cade. Thank you very much. For our viewers out there, thanks for joining us for episode 5. Have a safe, happy, healthy Memorial Day weekend. We're getting to the end of this. We see a light at the end of the tunnel. So Stay safe. Let's all shelter at home. We'll be back next Saturday at 4 p.m. with men's World Cup star Kobe Jones, who's also a UCLA guy, a 3-time FIFA World Cup participant, Olympian, all-time leader for Team USA in matches played. And then we'll be back again on June 6th at 4 p.m. with 4-time Super Bowl champion and 2-time Rose Bowl game participant Ronnie Lott. So thanks for checking us out. Follow us on YouTube. Follow us on Facebook. We'll see you next Saturday at 4 p.m. Pacific time. And stay safe out there, everybody. The Rose Bowl loves you. Thank you very much.
You are looking live.
There's something sacred about this stadium and this setting. There's nothing like this venue, in my opinion, in all of sports.
The setting is about as good as anywhere in the country. With the San Gabriel Mountains in the backdrop, it's always picturesque.
We're going to play football. Yippee! He's going for the corner. He's got it. Vince Young scores.